moshpitpassion, for the passion of music.
So, yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Sure, you're welcome.
I will direct start with the interview, and I really would like to start with the first part of the interview, which is about the inspiration and the songwriting. And for instance, Michael said during the, let me say, PR press run that God of Angels trust as a rebirth for the band. What sparked this creative new beginning, and how did it shape the songwriting process?
Mm, well, yeah, I guess it was some kind of rebirth. I think that kind of actually went back to the previous album a little bit, Servant of the Mind, where we kind of went and looked back a bit on what we used to do back in the days, and due to pandemic and all that stuff, we actually ended up recording that one like we used to do, and it turned out very well. And then, of course, Rob left the band, and we were down as a three-piece. So again, we kind of look back a little bit for this one, and we recorded it as a three-piece again. Obviously, Fleming came in and did the solos, but the main music of everything was the three of us, like we used to do. And I guess, him also doing the As in Hell project, which was kind of a throwback to the very early beginnings of his own musical career, actually. We all came from that background, but he took it last year a little bit further and did the As in Hell album and went on tour with it. And I guess that in a way also kind of inspired him to go back a little bit. And this time we talked a lot about it and said, let's put the music in the front seat and not so much, the vocals. And I guess also perhaps due to his operation for his throat and all that stuff, it's like, yeah, that's maybe, don't have as much vocals as we used to do. Let the riff be strong enough to stand on its own. So that's kind of a bit of a throwback thing.
If I get it right, also the songwriting process or song developing process was a very short
Yeah,
amount of time and
yeah,
time frame.
yeah.
And how did you experience the fast and, yeah, a short time frame when it comes to the songwriting approach for this album? And were there moments where you had the, let me say, rhythm completed and with Michael's unconventional ideas?
I mean, this is again like we used to do. I mean, back in the days, he would come in with some ideas for a song, let's say on Tuesday, and already 2 days later, when we would meet up again, he would have a new idea. So again, that was kind of like a throwback thing. But I guess, the fact that we were not touring at all in 24, apart from the 2 Iron Maiden shows in December, I mean, what else could we do but make an album? And I guess he was inspired and he had the ideas, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. And also the fact that we decided for this one we would only have like 10 songs, but have hopefully 10 equal strong songs instead of doing 15, 14, 16, how many songs we used to put out on albums in the past. And just focus on those 10 songs. And yeah, it took from when we started, it took like, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months at the top, and then we had the 10 songs. And of course we spent a couple of months just going over and over and over those songs again and again and again. And some of them were kind of torn apart because there were parts that didn't really work, and then he would go home and come up with a new part, and then we would test that part out, and okay, now it works. There were one of the songs that originally was slightly different, but for some reason we couldn't get it to work. And we tried so many times. In the end, we said, what doesn't work in this song? The only thing that we kind of figured was working was the rhythm part and the chorus. Nothing else worked. So he went home and he said, let's meet up in 2 days and I might have a new ideas. And he did. But and yeah, like I said, we rehearsed those songs for, I don't know, 3, 4 months, and then we went into the studio and cut them.
I don't know how deep you are with when it comes to the lyric part, let me say it this way, or
That,
at
that's
least
his that's his domain.
Okay. Because I really like the song, which got a huge long title, "In the Barn of the Goat Giving Birth to Satan Spawn in a Dying World of Doom," which
Yeah.
is a horror theme inspired thing. What were your thoughts, especially when this theme came up and you were like, oh, that's a long title?
Yeah, well, as I recall, he said, let's try and make a song with no chorus. And he had this long, long title. I can't even say it. I mess it up every time. And he said, how about let's try and build the song around the title? But instead of having, the conventional verse, bridge, chorus, stuff like that, he said, how about no chorus? And let's build the song so that the title will be that breakdown part of it. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And again, to me, that was a bit like, again, going back, because as I recall, we didn't think too much about chorus and verses and all that stuff in the early days. It was just whatever idea that we had, it just came out that way. And then I guess as we maybe got a little bit better, we started thinking about having a structure, more structure to the songs. But for this one, yeah, it's started out with, he had that title and he said, let's build around that and see what happens. And as you said, for the lyric wise, yeah, it's kind of like a horror movie theme to it. It's fun, and I used to say it's a kind of a classic title.
Obviously, you get a new band member, which is Fleming, as a new lead guitarist. And how was the studio dynamic, and how does it change if you compare it to your previous guitar player? And also when it comes to the recording, was there any kind of, let me say, change, or how was the vibe?
Obviously the vibe is different because Fleming is Danish like we are, so we don't have to speak English all the time now that Rob isn't here. But Fleming, first and foremost, is a brilliant guitar player like Rob was. Absolutely. But for the recording, I mean, Fleming wasn't there when we recorded. He had made some solos and he sent them, I guess, to Michael. And he said, how about this? How about that? And Michael could say, yeah, this is kind of good. Nah, this is not really good. But I think when Fleming recorded the solos, I don't think any of us were there. I'm not even sure Michael was there, actually. I don't think he was, because he'd already heard the solos and added whatever he felt like added or changed them. So Fleming did the recording on his own, and he did it, I think, a week after we left the studio. But, on the other hand, we didn't really need to be there because Michael already, like I said, he already made a little correction here and there, or whatever came into Fleming's head. He was like, yeah, fine, go nuts. But yeah, I mean, he's Danish, and so that's of course different than when Rob was in the band. But he's from the mainland. He's kind of quiet. He's really down to earth, and he's just as stupid as the rest of us.
Um,
And he's a big, actually, like Rob was, but Fleming is a big music lover too. He loves, when we are on tour, he loves to go to record stores, and pick out albums and all that stuff. And he and Michael especially, go on and on and on about that whole especially the newer death metal scenes. I have no idea what they're talking about, but they seem to get a great kick out of it.
do you also still visiting record shops when you are on
Oh
tour?
yeah,
Is it something you do?
oh yeah.
Do you have any kind of recommendations when you are here, especially touring in Germany, and you play also like in Cologne? I saw during the last tour stops which you played in, yeah, Cologne a couple of times,
Yeah,
Berlin, Hamburg.
yeah. Uh, Honestly, I don't really know the names of any of the stores. We usually ask, is there a record store nearby? And somebody said, oh, yeah, there's this one called this and that. All right, fine, take us there. But, any record store is fine. Those two tend to gravitate towards more the metal thing, and I tend to gravitate towards more secondhand things. So sometimes we'll just go in together and then we go in our different ways.
Do you have any kind of, let me say, holy grail in your collection, or still looking for?
Uh, um, I don't know if it's if it's a holy grail as such, I do have a few like kind of rare Japanese prints of stuff like promo discs and all that. But if that's a holy grail, I'm not sure. It depends on what the holy grail is actually. I guess you always search for the holy grail.
Mm. I don't know if you are familiar with the record fair in Den Bosch, which is the world's largest record fair.
I've heard about it and I've seen pictures of it. I've never been there, and I don't think I ever will because it will probably ruin me.
Oh, God. You have to visit it. It's a great convention over 3 days, and
Yeah,
yeah, but you have to set a limit because you're broke.
yeah.
But
I would imagine I would definitely go broke. I'll probably go crazy. But I've not this year actually, but the last couple of years I've been to a bunch of them in Denmark actually. But after being there in such a place for like an hour, I usually have enough because there's too many people, too many people running around, and you can't really go through stuff because there's too many people there. So I tend to stay there for like an hour, and usually instead of taking my time and go around and see if I can find stuff, if I go into the first booth, let's say, and find something, it's like, oh, there it is. Okay, I'll buy that. And maybe I could find it a bit cheaper, two doors down or something. But yeah, I like to go there, to take a look.
did you find somehow, somewhere, some kind of bootlegs of your own band? And
You
what was
know,
your reaction?
I haven't really never seen any Volbeat bootlegs. I know there's a couple out there. A friend of mine did send me a CD of a broadcast show from Sweden, actually, from what was that, 2008 or 2009? But that was some sort of Russian CD type of thing. I've seen a guy I know has a recording from, I think that's 2007 as well, from Holland. Uh, but I've seen a few DVDs, which is basically, I think, was it one of them was from Graspop a couple of years ago, and I think Wacken, some of the Wacken shows, but they were broadcast on TV anyway. So I guess that's the only ones I've seen. I've never seen anything on vinyl though.
So yeah, let's switch back to the record, and especially when it comes to your drumming.
Mm-hmm.
And your drumming is, of course, the rhythmic backbone of your music, a mix of metal, mixing different styles of music in general, metal, punk, rockabilly. And would you say there is any new technique or approach you tried on the new record to enhance this, let me say, raw sound which you created?
No, not at all. I call myself a one trick pony. So I do what I do, but I've always listened to what the guitars are doing, basically. So and Michael would have these what do you call it? Maybe call it some type of a quirky type of thing of hitting the strings or something. So sometimes I would listen to that and go, oh yeah, that then I could add, maybe an extra snare drum hit or a kick drum hit or something. But um and that's basically it. I don't, for me, with the type of music that we play, it's more about, try to keep the rhythm and keep it kind of simple. Actually, I don't see the point of, being super technical and fly around the kit all the time. I don't think that would fit the music at all. I could be wrong, but I don't think so, because our music, if you start to tear it apart, it's actually kind of simple in a way. It's not that simple to play, actually. A lot of people think that, but it's actually not. But you got to remember, me and him has been playing together for almost 25 years. So whenever he do something, 9 out of 10 times I would know instantly. Okay, he's going in that way, and the other way around, actually. And now when he comes up with the song, so a lot of the times he will actually have an idea for the drums in his head, and he would explain, try something like this, and then I will try it, and he would say, yeah, that's cool, or maybe he said, nah, that's try something else. Or sometimes we would just play through something, and then maybe I would change something. And sometimes again he would go, oh, I didn't think of that, that's kind of cool, or you say, nah, that's too much, or whatever.
So, which song would you say is the boldest departure from the classic sound on the new record?
Hmm.
I mean, I see some similarities which you did in the past. I see
Yeah.
also, I don't would say that As and Hell was inspiring when it comes to riffs, but there's one or two songs with the heavy
Yeah.
riff, which I can say. But
Yeah.
also,
I think maybe that there's perhaps two songs that will probably divide people, I think, on this one, and that's probably Acid Rain
mm,
and Time Will Heal. They'll probably, I think, maybe the two songs that would divide people, and some would say, what the F is this? And some would say, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But I think in total, again, if you look back on our catalog, we would always have songs that would go in each and any direction. So it's not like we have taken a complete left turn and done something completely different that would make people go, what are they doing? You know?
I really like Acid Rain, especially when it comes to the new record, because it's, I don't want to say unusual, but it's something different, a different vibe or something. I don't know how to explain it, but it's for me, it's stands out of the record.
Yeah,
Uh,
it definitely has a slightly different vibe to it than some of the other songs, which is perhaps more what people, dare I say, kind of wanted to expect from us. It's yeah, it has a different vibe, but I think Time Will Heal also has, you know, a slightly different vibe to it. But again, I think you could go back in our catalog and say, oh yeah, they had other songs like that.
It's interesting what you mentioned when it comes to the older songs. I don't know if you got any ideas for, let me say, a set list when you're coming on tour. Which songs from the new record would you say go hand in hand with older songs when it comes to the vibe when you're playing a show? You know what I mean? Because there are different songs, and you also try let me say this is a part where it's getting emotional. That's a part for the mosh pit. Yeah, do we have any thoughts about that?
Well, hopefully all the new songs will work live. I mean, right now we're still working on the set list. We are rehearsing all the new songs because the plan is during the whole tour, which starts in like a month, that we will play all 10 songs, not in the same set, but you know, change them around every now and then, because we might have an idea about certain songs that we think, oh yeah, this is going to go down great, and people are going to go absolutely nuts, and then maybe it turns out that they don't go absolutely nuts. So, and then maybe people will say, oh yeah, why don't they play this song instead of that song? So we are, the goal is actually to try and play all 10 songs during the whole tour at some point, you know. So right now we're still working out the set list to see what will do and what will not do. But hopefully we will be able to play when the tour is over in November, that we can sit down and say, oh yeah, we definitely did play all 10 songs. And you know, like I said, maybe some of them won't work live. And maybe some songs that we perhaps kind of figured, well, maybe that won't work, maybe that will work. I mean, that has happened before. Some songs where we kind of go, yeah, it might not be, you know, yeah, it might not work. Let's try it. And then the place is blown up, you know.
It's definitely a cool concept because usually bands, when they're releasing a new record and they got, let me say, 18 records on the shelf, they're
Mm,
playing just two or three songs. That's it. And I'm asking all of this myself, it's like, why do you release records with 10 or 12 songs? You play just two songs
yeah.
live. But
But
what you are doing is,
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
but
something.
it is, you know, it is actually, I think the more albums you do, the more difficult it actually gets, because you know, we know that there are a handful of songs that we have to play every night. Doesn't matter if we want to play them or not, but we simply have to play them. And every band has this, you know. I mean, I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan. I love Maiden. They can do no wrong in my eyes. But every time I go to a Maiden show, it's like, oh my God, they're going to play the Trooper again. Jesus Christ. Give it a rest, people. Really, you've been playing it ever since 1983. But I also know if I go to a Maiden show and they don't play the Trooper, I would stand and go, well, wait a minute. why didn't they play the Troubadour? What's up with that? So it actually gets kind of difficult, and that's one of the cool things that I think Metallica is actually doing right now by doing the two sets, because
It's
I mean, they have, I don't know, have at least 5 or 6 songs that they have to play every night. People will be so disappointed if they didn't. So that idea about changing the set list for those two shows is actually a pretty good idea. I mean, we usually don't do two shows in the same area. And again, like I said, we do have a handful of songs that we know we have to play, and we will play them no matter what. We will play them, but we also, because now we have a new album, that we want to play as many new songs as possible. But again, some songs may take a couple of years before people actually get into them. So, like I said, the more albums you do down the line, the more difficult it gets. And I've also noticed, and that's probably for a lot of bands too, that the audience is changing during the years. So maybe people who really loved our first album and think that's the only thing we ever did that was great and the rest is pure shit, those people are probably not even at the shows anymore, because we have tried in the past, a couple of years ago, to include some of the more obscure stuff. It was in America though, but people had no idea what we were doing. So it was like, okay, maybe that's the end of those kind of more obscure songs.
So, John, I see unfortunately our time is running out, and I just got one question left. I also asked this question, Michael, but he couldn't answer it. Do you
Okay.
know what a seam split is when it comes to records?
Seam split?
Yes.
Nope, I do not.
It's a crack in the cover. I
Yeah.
don't know if you're buying records or you're sending records and you're receiving a parcel, open it up, and it's a huge cut.
Okay.
And I was asking Michael if he got any records like he always wanted to, let me say, to buy, and he bought it and he got a parcel, it's opened up and he sees the cover
Yeah.
all broken and down, and the term for this is seam split.
Okay.
So,
I've heard the word seam split, but that, I think, isn't that something to do with jeans?
no, no, no,
No, no,
no.
no. Okay. Well, no, I've never heard it, and I have never experienced it on anything that I've ordered, actually.
That's definitely good if you got no experience about it. It's very for a record collector. I have also a huge record collection right in front of me. It's hurting me when there's some kind of seam splits over there.
Yeah, well, I guess that sometimes can happen through. But again, like I said earlier, I gravitate towards more secondhand things, and sometimes those secondhand vinyls and CDs, by the way, are not in the best condition. But if that's the only version you can get, just close your eyes and buy it.
So, John, thank you very much for the time for the interview.
You're welcome.
Wish you all the best. Also, all the best for the new record, and hope to see you this fall in Germany.
We will be there.
Definitely.
All right.
Moshpit passion, for the passion of music.